On this week's episode of the Geek State, news from Indiana Jones 5 has the Twitter fandom shook.
If you enjoy being surprised by whodunits, don't look at your phone, or maybe even theirs.
Star Wars The High Republic is bringing a whole new era to fans, plus my reaction to Sonic the Hedgehog, geek camping trips, and more on this episode of the Geek State.
Now on video. If it's excitement you want, thrills you seek, action you crave, then remember, adventure does have a name. Indiana Jones.
Stand by alert.
This is it.
50% of the time, this podcast works every time. This is the Geek State.
Welcome, everybody, to the Geek State, the podcast about all the cool stuff going on the world of geek. That's movies, video games, comic books, action figures, what have you. I'm Chris, and joining me, as always, my good buddy, James. James, how are we doing tonight?
I mean, I'm doing quite well. Things are going great. I'm not doing nearly as bad as the guy who messed up that code on the Robinhood app. So there's that.
I know exactly. I was just on the Robinhood thing. I've got a few stocks on that thing, actually. So I've been getting all of the emails, kind of just giving people updates on that whole situation. Yeah,
one simple is leap would have done wonders on that. I believe the app is looking for it to be 3.3 today, when in fact it is 3.2. But, you know, these things happen, I guess. You know, it just so happened to fall on the day that the Dow Jones Industrial went up by the highest point percentage of all time. So, you know, or not percentage, but highest point total of all time.
Point total.
So,
yeah, it's been a little up and down. Been watching my Funko stock just go like whoop, 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 you know.
Oh, so. It's fun. Has Funko been impacted by the coronavirus?
You know what? Actually, I think so. Funny that you said that. I had pre-ordered a Chrome Mandalorian from Amazon. It's their Amazon exclusive, and it's the nicest looking of the Mandalorian Funko Pops, in my opinion. And because it looks more screen accurate. It's got the chrome finish on all the Beskar, which it was originally supposed to arrive February 17th. And if you look at the calendar, that day has long gone. And now my new estimated arrival is sometime in June.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I have to imagine that there is some sort of supply chain, affecting, and that's and you might be wondering, why would we ever talk about this on the podcast? Not only is it topical, and news of the day, but as collectors, a lot of our stuff doesn't, it's got to be shipped over. So There's a lot of stuff that is being delayed. I know I have a coworker at work whose husband collects a lot of the Hot Toys stuff.
Oh, wow.
And also has had some delays in estimated shipping.
I mean, it's not on the show notes that we were going to talk about this. This is just how this podcast goes, where we find ourselves a lane and we just drive, baby. But PlayStation has had a lot of things come out, news statements about coronavirus. Right now, PAX East is going on in Boston, and they bought a huge amount of floor space that they're just taking sunk cost on because they don't want to send employees there with all the worldwide travel bans that are occurring constantly. They don't want to send employees there and then potentially them not be able to get back, things like that. And then they've also announced, there's been some speculation that release dates haven't been announced for the consoles quite yet because they're worried about, being able to meet manufacturer demands. Right, because most of these things are assembled in China, so it's kind of interesting to see how it all plays out. I hope everyone gets better, but I need
my PlayStation 5.
I just need my PlayStation 5. So let's get to stop coughing.
I know. I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that Animal Crossing's already in the States. I'm hoping that shipment of stuff is already here,
and it has been loused.
It has been thoroughly fogged, and just because I need it. I have been watching so much of it. I'm going to talk about that on the next show. Get us closer to that release date. Here at the top of the show, I just want to first of all thank everybody. I've noticed a few more subscriptions coming through, some back catalog downloads. So that's really exciting. We hope that you're on our social media networks on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. And if you enjoy the show, one of the ways that you can help us is by hitting that retweet button and sharing stuff on Facebook, and sharing us with your friends, because it's about that. That's what brought James and I together to podcast, was talking about Star Wars around a campfire, and that's how the podcast grows. So appreciate everybody who likes our stuff. Go one step further and hit that share button and help grow the Geek State. Speaking of campfire, James, this is a segue into me talking about a camp out that I just went on that is particularly geeky and fits the format of the show.
You know, Chris, the fun thing about segues is you don't have to talk about them.
Is it supposed to be seamless? I feel like I just did a purred happily or something. The next thing I will say is a segue into our next segment, which begins now. So I went camping, and I love going camping. Don't do it as often as I'd like. And in the old days, back when I was a Boy Scout, I try to be kind of minimalist. You take only what you need. But now I'm old. And I kind of like to make sure that camping is a little more comfortable, a little more enjoyable. I don't bring a game system or anything like that, but I do want to share something that was really cool. It's the first time I've ever done this. I took with me a projector screen, like a fabric one that was easy to hang up, and the Anchor Nebula Mars projector. And if you haven't seen one of those, it's a small, compact projector that's got a built-in 30-watt speaker on the outside. It's got USB on the back, so you can plug in a USB device that has video files on it. You can also, of course, plug in something HDMI, etc. But it was really cool. We had kind of a little mini movie marathon while we were there. The first night we watched Weird Science, which I had never seen. James, it's a movie from the 80s that just people assumed I had already seen because I'm, getting closer to 40 years old. Have you seen Weird Science? Because I feel like I felt so outside by not have seen it.
So
before.
Weird Science is one of those movies that I know a ton about, but I don't know if I've ever seen it. I think I have, but it was forever ago, if that makes any sense. I have not seen it. I would not take it. I would not invite myself to Weird Science trivia. Let's just put it that way.
Right. And it is one of those movies, too, that I had a idea of what the movie was. I feel like if someone said, OK, what's the movie Weird Science about? I could on paper write down the basics of what that movie was. But I had never actually sat and watched it. And it was really cool. Except I do remember not being able to watch it because there was nudity in it when it came out. Ooh. I know. And it's brief. It is so brief. But the thing, I started getting a little self-conscious because we're playing this on a screen that's strung up between trees. The screen is actually, you can see the screen on the other side. And so I was like trying to figure out when stuff would maybe not be appropriate and kind of keeping an eye out for, people who are walking by, at night. It ended up being no big deal. So we watched Weird Science Friday night, and then Saturday night we watched Flight of the Navigator, which was really cool to watch one more time. But this time, outside we had this giant bowl of it's a chili that has macaroni and cheese on top and on a bed of Fritos. It was incredible. It was awesome. And it got me thinking too. I was like,
keto friendly too.
Oh yeah, 100%. James, I'm off that bandwagon for just a little bit since that camp out. It was like, well, we broke keto on the weekend. So, I guess I'll have some cookies or a pizza or something, and I'll get back to it when I can. So, and then I've got a trip coming up. So it's just sort of, I'll get back to it once we're back from the trip. But got me thinking and just kind of throwing it out there. At first I thought, well, this would be a fun thing to do, is to get all of the hosts and guests of the podcast together, and let's, in the near future, maybe in the fall or sometime, plan some sort of camp out and have another movie type thing where we, all get together, do stuff outdoors, and then we watch some nerdy stuff, at night. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that, James, off mic, to maybe put something together. I think that would be a cool thing. We can get James, the other James, and maybe Jessica and Daniel up, and everybody. I think it'd be a really fun time.
I think we can make that happen.
I think it'd be really cool. It's kind of where we all kind of, we both met at camp, and same with the other James, and just a nice little geeky reunion, camping style. But next up, James, you've got something for 2020 that I think is really cool. I want you to get a chance to introduce it, because we'll dive a little more deeply into it next week.
I will. And I think probably by next week we'll have a theme song and all sorts of great things to go with it. Isn't that right, Chris?
Absolutely.
But no, in the year 2020, I made kind of a resolution to play more games and buy less games, if that makes any sense. And that would be, I have lots of games sitting in this room that I'm recording in right now. And I seem to acquire, but I don't seem to take time to actually play them and enjoy them. So with 2020, what I've decided to do is I've decided that I must play a game, not necessarily to completion, but play it to where I feel satisfied that I've played a decent amount of that game before I buy another one. Is kind of the route that I'm trying to go. So I've started, and the plan is to log this and to keep track of what I've done, what I've played, not necessarily how long, but just what I've played, and whether I completed it or whether I quit because it was too hard, because I don't have, unfortunately in my life, I don't have time to get good anymore. It's either I can play it or I can't. So luckily the AVS that I use for my NES games has a Game Genie on board. So the route that I go when playing those games is I play it for about an hour and 15 minutes. And if I am not having fun getting better, like obviously I'm going to get a little bit better each time, but if I'm not enjoying that process, then I'll go ahead and put in a couple of the cheat codes, maybe more health, not necessarily invincibility, but more health and things like that to help me along the way. And then if that still doesn't go very well, then we go ahead and just bump it up and put all the codes in. To make it through the game. And it's been a lot of fun that I've been doing it so far. But I think we can parlay this into a segment in the show. Not only me talking about this type of thing, but also I was looking online where I have my game collection. I can export that into a shareable document. We could potentially have votes to see what people want me to play.
Nice.
Like that. And then also maybe pick out games that either you have as well or you've played before, and we can kind of talk about it a little bit. But I think it'll be a fun little segment of the show. More next week is when we'll actually kind of have the inaugural segment of James gameplay working title.
Yeah, well, I got to come up with something that I can rhyme, because I'll be doing the jingle for it. So I need to be able to, sing a song. Plus, I didn't announce it on the show, but I was at a conference last week and I won a guitar. So I'm gonna learn how to play the guitar. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's gonna be some original tunes from yours truly.
Cannot wait for all of those.
I know. I'm honestly, I'm just going to be excited if I can play Ring of Fire from Johnny Cash. Like that's my goal, is to be able to play that song with enough proficiency that if you just heard the guitar part, you'd be like, oh, it's Ring of Fire, So that's the goal. Before we get into the news, on the last episode of the podcast, the Starship Troopers episode, I was talking about potentially going to see Sonic the Hedgehog, which I did. I saw it after getting back from the camp out. And as much as I really wanted to not enjoy that movie, it's not bad. It's not terrible. I have definitely seen worse movies, especially video game movies. Sonic is very likable. It's funny. The jokes are not for us, our age. They are meant for children. It's a kids movie with some winks and nods towards the Sonic and stuff that we love. The opening sequence is great because you're seeing like this, Sonic's world like we're used to seeing from the video games, but then he gets thrown into our world, and at that point it's just a buddy movie where you're trying to avoid being caught by Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, for the whole movie. But definitely the credit sequence is great. It's like 16-bit style animated thing while all the main, the director and writer and all the main stuff goes by. And then, there's a little Marvel style, little teaser thing at the end. You don't have to wait through the entire credits, which I did. It comes midway through the credits, and it stars. I'm going to say spoiler alert if it really bothers you, but it's got Tails showing up right at the end, and he is it a guy? Is Tails a guy or a girl?
I believe Tails is a girl. Tails obviously an alias for her real name, Miles Prower, which is a great pun that the Sega Sonic team came up with. But I do believe it is a girl. But I might be wrong. Who knows? Who knows?
Who can possibly know?
It is a he. Sorry. This Sega Wiki knows. Miles Prower, is he a young male golden yellow anthropomorphic fox with two tails? Right. Similar to the mythological Katsuni or Yoko.
Of course.
Which was often depicted with tails up to 9, which also Pokemon Ninetales is also a Yoko. So there's that. There's a fun day. Yeah.
It teases an interesting little thing. We kind of, in the car ride back from the movie, we're kind of like, well, what the next one could be like, and what's, where the story could take us. And I was like, God, why are we talking about Sonic the Hedgehog? It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So, maybe, if you got an unlimited movie pass, this is why not go see it. If you don't, it's not going to hurt to wait for it to show up on, HBO, I guess, Warner Brothers, whoever made this. No, it's Paramount. Paramount made this. So CBS All Access, the thing they're doing, I don't know. But let's jump right into
rent it from your local Family Video.
Or you can, yes, exactly. All right, time for the news. And if news had a name, it would be James Mangold. Terrible headline, which was not what I wrote. I just was riffing. I should not have had to say that either. Indiana Jones number 5, which we've known about for a while. It's been something that as soon as Disney bought Lucasfilm, along with the news of the sequel trilogy, there was also talk about Steven Spielberg returning with Indiana Jones 5. Of course, Harrison Ford. We had some news on a recent show, maybe even the last one, but Harrison Ford talking to an interviewer on CBS Sunday Morning about how in a couple of months he's returning to the role. And up to this point, it's been Steven Spielberg in the director's seat, but Variety has reported, and as of yet, there has been no stories to the contrary. So I have to believe that this reporting is sound, is that Steven Spielberg has stepped down as the director of the 5th installment of the Indiana Jones franchise, and James Mangold is stepping up to the role. You might know James Mangold as the guy that did Logan. He also did the recent Ford versus Ferrari. And I am kind of shocked how... You know what? Okay, I'm not actually shocked. I was about to say I'm shocked how fandom responded to this, but really I'm not, because anything that comes out about any of these franchises from the 80s immediately gets it's just chaos, and I don't understand it. The report also said that Steven is going to be a producer and, in quotes, a hands-on producer. So it's not like he's completely out of this and here comes James Mangold and he's going to do whatever he wants with this thing. Steven's going to be highly involved in this whole thing. His reputation, even though he's not directing, is still attached to Indiana Jones in this franchise. Right. Jonathan Kasdan, who is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, is now writing the screenplay. Originally, it was going to be penned by David Koepp, who is the guy that wrote Crystal Skull. Now, of course, Jonathan is the son of Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he also co-wrote Solo with his dad as well. So I'm kind of just a little bit like, guys, this is news, but it's also a little bit of like, come on, fandom. Like, I think we need to take a deep breath, because if you're, and it's usually the same people who didn't like the Crystal Skull to begin with, which was a Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas picture, right. And it's like, okay, well, maybe if you hadn't been so upset with the Crystal Skull, maybe they wouldn't maybe Steven Spielberg wouldn't be so worried about directing a fifth one.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things like maybe the billionaire doesn't care what you think. Like he's like he probably doesn't want to spend his time and his heart and energy when he has a family, going to I'm sure they're going to like remote locations for this. Like it's going to be I would assume not the easiest schedule on the planet. And maybe he doesn't want to have to do all that just for people to tell him that it's not as good as Raiders. Like
it's kind of what George did. George at the end of doing the prequels was kind of like, I'm done. I'm retiring. I don't want to do this anymore. And then he, got the itch and worked with, did a lot of Clone Wars stuff. But, his name wasn't, he wasn't directing it. He wasn't writing episodes. He was, consulting. He was doing the part that is still important. George kind of directed Return of the Jedi. Richard Marquand officially directed it, but George was the hands-on executive producer the whole way. So I can't imagine that it's the same situation. A movie like this, it's like 100 days of nonstop shooting plus all the stuff that goes pre and post. So that's a lot of work. And if you're just going to get crapped on, then why bother?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think he will be involved in a lot of that post stuff, which is really the most important part. You can film a movie and really your editor is what makes the movie. That's like
absolutely
1,000%. The editor, you can take two things and have two completely different tones depending on how you edit it. Right. So, and I think that that's where he's going to be most valuable anyway, is really being able to use those editing, use the shots and things like that and kind of help piece it all together to really make it feel Indiana Jones. That's all done post.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you got Harrison Ford, who knows Indiana Jones. Like there's no one that needs to actually direct Harrison on how to be Indiana Jones. And then you've got all the stuff that'll happen pre-production that Steven will be involved with, which is going to be working with the story and making sure that that's all good. And then he'll be in the edit bay and he'll be working on that on the other side of principal photography. And then you got Jonathan Kasdan, who is basically the apprentice, heir apparent to Lawrence Kasdan. He's an awesome writer. I think it's going to be great. And it caused some people to wonder about, the release date, because Disney had put out a release date a while back, and this movie keeps getting delayed. And so there's been some concern. Will it be delayed even further? But even after this news, a couple of days later passed, and Walt Disney updated their large release calendar showing all the big, major tentpole films that they're coming out. And it's still in its place for July 9th, 2021. And that does kind of line up with Harrison Ford, in the next month, starting to roll film on this. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they move it out of the summer and maybe into a November spot or something like that. But that I can't. They've got some other stuff. They've got Avatar and they've got some other big holiday movie stuff that summer might still be the best place. I don't know, that kind of thing. But definitely we'll have more Indiana Jones news as stuff starts to surface. Looking to really find out more about where they go after Crystal Skull. Actually, you know what, James, I had a little interesting thought. After Crystal Skull came out and people were like, oh man, Shia LaBeouf and blah, I hope they don't pass the torch to him and, all this kind of thing. And then I started to kind of think, I was like, well, maybe the delay in this next Indiana Jones movie was because Shia LaBeouf kind of went off the rails and now he's kind of back doing like really good films. And kind of like, and so like his reputation has started to be mended. I say bring him back.
I've always been a LaBeouf fan. I'm a fan of the LaBeouf.
So we'll have more news on that. I just was wanting to throw that out there. It's kind of like, that'd be interesting if that was kind of played into it, that he's part of that, that next story. I also would like to see Short Round come back, grown up. I think that'd be cool.
Is that guy still active or no? I don't know. No one knows. No one knows. But there's a lot of things that are active. One of the things that is very active is Apple. They're always announcing new things. They're always innovating on their old things. And something that was revealed by Rian Johnson, of all people, about Apple is that they won't allow bad guys in movies to use iPhones.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. But he said in a quote, he said, another funny thing, I don't know if I should say this or not because it's lascivious or something, but because it's going to screw me on the next mystery movie I write. But he said, forget it, I'll say it. It's very interesting. Apple, they let you use iPhones in movies, and this is very pivotal if you're ever watching a mystery movie, bad guys cannot have iPhones on camera. And that is hilarious.
So next time you watch Knives Out, pay close attention. Most likely you've seen it, but if you haven't seen it, go back and check which people were using what phones. I find that interesting. Now Ryan can't, when he makes the sequel to Knives Out, which he's doing, he's got to give everybody some generic, Android phone.
Not only him, literally everyone has to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're trying to figure out who done it. That's crucial. It's okay if you're making like a Die Hard and, type of a movie where who the bad guy is. Like that's different, give Kylo Ren an Android, but as soon as he becomes Ben Solo, give that boy an iPhone, and then you kind of. Well,
the thing is he'd have to have an Android in the first two movies, but as long as in the end he's a good guy, he can have an Apple phone in the third movie.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as he's revealed to be the good guy. But yeah, interestingly enough, there will be no remote bombs detonated by iPhones in movies.
Yeah. A little thing, and now you know. And then you're supposed to say, "And knowing is half the battle."
I will not say that.
They got the officials counting.
This is a feature presentation.
And now, on with the show.
All right, with Rise of Skywalker in the rearview mirror and months to go until we have new Star Wars television. Well, of course, with the exception of Clone Wars, which is now airing their final season, which is fantastic, by the way. What's new in the galaxy far, far away? Well, Star Wars, a brand new era, in fact, of Star Wars is coming this year in August, and we're getting ready for Star Wars: The High Republic.
We're finding ourselves at a very exciting moment with the Skywalker saga coming to an end. We're at a place of what's next for Star Wars. One of the things we've always done is be able to use our franchise platforms to explore the creative potential in the Star Wars galaxy. And so what if publishing was more of an incubation place and bring in great talent and just let their imaginations roam free?
So Star Wars: The High Republic, which has been previously referred to as Project Luminous, it's going to be set when the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order are kind of at their peak. It's about 200 years prior to the events of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. This is a period of Star Wars timeline that's not going to overlap any of the filmed features or series that are currently in production, because we know that there are movies upcoming. So don't get too pumped or excited, because, ladies and gentlemen, this is for books and publishing. So these won't be the subject line for any of the upcoming movies. These stories are going to play out through novels for both adults, young adults, comics, and then there'll be a various, other types of publishing efforts that are going to be going on. They recently revealed all of this stuff in a big press conference with a splashy trailer, which got me all excited. And so, James, when are we going to really start to see this stuff hit shelves?
Well, the first books and comics are set to debut at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in August 2020 with Star Wars: High Republic, The Light of the Jedi, a massive interconnected story that's told across various formats by various publishers. And there's kind of doing this in waves, it appears. And by the way, Chris, it's well documented. I don't like books. Okay. Books are for people to read, and they can keep
for nerds.
for nerds.
For a geek podcast.
I was very excited when I first saw this announcement, and then I was like, ugh. Anyways,
it's not about Star Wars books. It's just James's disdain for books and reading
in general. But I will say that any books that I do own, I would say 95% of them are Star Wars books, and I do enjoy them when I actually read them. So I should probably read more. But anyways, I got these games to play through, and now I've committed to it. But anyways, so the first wave of the High Republic titles include Star Wars: The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, Star Wars: The High Republic, Into the Dark, by Claudia Gray, Star Wars: The High Republic, A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland, Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures by David Jose Older.
Daniel.
Oh, I'm sorry, Daniel Jose Older. And finally, we have Star Wars: The High Republic and just with nothing, no colon, by Cavan Scott.
So those last two. So the Star Wars High Republic Adventures is going to be a more child-centric IDW comic series.
Okay.
Kind of like Star Wars Adventures, they have a current line like that. And then Star Wars The High Republic by Cavan Scott is going to be the Marvel comic line. So there will be the standalone comics on that. And then High Republic, The Light of the Jedi by Charles Sewell. He's the guy that's been doing a lot of the Darth Vader Star Wars Marvel stuff,
which is great. So,
and this will be his novel that will kind of kick things off, start everything off. And the video is really cool, and there's a lot of little Easter eggs that are kind of sprinkled. If you pause the video and look at what the notes say, and they've got all kinds of cool concept art. What's that?
Dinosaurs.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's coming up. And people are freaking out about the dinosaurs part. I'm like, guys, calm down. It was just a brainstorming list. So in canon, this is kind of what we know so far, because they're not, obviously they're holding stuff back. It's Star Wars, for God's sake. There's secrets and everything. But they did give us quite a bit, to kind of, get our appetite going. So in canon, the High Republic era, this story is going to kick off with an event they're calling the Great Disaster. It's basically like, it's like a 9/11 massive, cataclysmic event that forces the universe that is currently at peace to band together like they've never had before. And at the center of this are the bad guys who are called the Nile. And these are the bad guys. I'm not sure if we saw some concept art, and it's like these. They look more like pirates to me. It's a various species. There's even like a Max Rebo. I don't know his alien species, but the piano player from Jabba's palace.
Yeah, it's kind of important to note the Nile is like a group of people, not a race or a species. It's like
it's not the Yuuzhan Vong. Basically.
Right.
Which honestly, kind of, I'm like, that's kind of what Star Wars, looking back on it, I'm like, wasn't too fond of it, but they kind of, need some sort of big thing that's not Sith. They need this thing. So I got high hopes.
Well, got high hopes. See, Chris, they'll introduce the Nile here, and then the next movies that take place after Episode 9 is the return of the Nile. You see, this is how it works. That's how it's going to work.
I can see that.
When the Sith tried to return, it didn't work out so well. However, when the Nile returned, it's a whole nother threat.
Yeah, you got Cleopatra to kicking butt. It's going to be great. The Nile. It's not spelled that way.
I'll be interested to see. Sorry to interrupt again, but I'll be interested to see what the I guess the goal of the Nile is. What is the moving factor of them? I think that's kind of we know what the Jedi are for. They're for keeping peace and maintaining order. But kind of what is the end game for the Nile, right? I think that's going to be really interesting.
In the video, they mention sort of, I guess, the motto of the Nile, or kind of like their guiding principles, which was basically like, you can't take it with you, but we can take it from you. Like when you die, you can't take it with you, but we can take whatever we want from you. So I don't know what that means.
Very pirate-like.
That's kind of what I think. I kind of think it's sort of a misdirection. I don't think these are they're telling us that the Nile are the bad guys. I don't want to believe that. I think that this is misdirection, but that's just what my gut's saying. Cause I feel like they don't seem as from what they showed us so far. I don't feel like they're as much of a threat as they were trying to show us, because then they also said, they asked all these writers this question of what scares the Jedi. And I don't think it's pirates. I don't think it's a band of bad guys.
Right.
It's got to be something much bigger than that. They also said in the video that the Republic's in this current era is not as far reaching as it was that we saw in the prequels. So it doesn't go to all ends. And even in the prequels, it really didn't reach. It didn't reach Tatooine. So I'm not even thinking like Outer Rim. I'm thinking stuff that's a little closer in. And it's the Outer Rim areas and the stuff that's even, would have been in the more current Republic that we saw in the prequels is more of a Wild West. They describe the Jedi as being like the Texas Rangers. It kind of goes with the Obi-Wan Kenobi line from A New Hope, where, you know, for 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice, you know. Even though that line says in the Old Republic, this is the High Republic. But this is sort of the height of the Jedi. I do want to point out there is a Wookiee Jedi, which is always fun to read in a book, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. That's why I think they killed off Chewbacca in the old Legends line, because he's hard to write for because he can't really talk. And then, as James, you noted, there's a whiteboard with their list of things, like the Star Wars is not pro-war. The Jedi are this, and then it has a column for wish lists, and right up towards the top, dinosaurs.
So silly. And I mean, I'm excited for this idea. I'm excited to read the cliff notes of all these books and find out what all these characters do in them. But it's new Star Wars. What I'm most interested in is, obviously, they're introducing this new bad guy, which we discussed. But so you still have, is the Old Republic canon? Yes, Darth Revan is canon.
Darth Revan is canon because he was in Clone Wars, and Darth Bane, the character of Darth Bane is canon. No, you know what? Darth Revan is actually not canon. Even though he's been in some recent games and stuff, he's still listed as Legends. Darth Bane is canon, but not the books that came out. Darth Bane's actually created by George Lucas. Right. That character is. So his appearance in the Clone Wars makes it kind of really solidifies him as in canon. He's not really himself. He's kind of this Force thing but because he interacts with Yoda, it makes him canon. I guess
kind of what I'm getting at is, like, I believe that all occurred before 200 years prior to the prequels. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the Sith. Is the Sith just gone? Are they, because, you know,
the Sith have been extinct for a millennia. Oh, you know, that's the line from Phantom Menace.
Oh, so that's true.
We have to assume that the Sith aren't there. It makes me wonder, are the Nile Force sensitive? Are they, you know, just bad guys with cool weapons? You know, what's going on in this world? You know, but as soon as they started talking about, like, the Republic and the Jedi and the Texas Rangers, I got the very Western vibe, which I'm you know, I always liked about Star Wars to begin with. So I think that's a really interesting direction. Now, I am also in your camp, James, of I'm not a huge reader. I read only maybe a couple of, at best a couple books a year. And they take me a really long time. And that's why I love Audible. But it's been a long time since I've read or listened to any of the recent Star Wars stuff. But this has got me a little interested, only because when the Old Republic series of novels came out to kind of promote the BioWare game, I got into it. I got into reading and listening to the stories, because it was a fresh start in a galaxy that I was familiar with, but I didn't know the characters. And so this was a fresh start, because Legends was hard, even though I listened and read a lot of those books, you know, the big long series and stuff. But it took me a while to kind of know, because there's all these other books with, you know, what these characters were up to and who are these people. And this is going to start. It's a reboot. It's a fresh start. And I think that's exciting. But even more exciting, James, is my hope that this will expand beyond just books and comics. You know, back in the 90s, Lucasfilm did their little experiment with Shadows of the Empire, and it was books, it was comics, it had action figures, it had a soundtrack to a movie that didn't exist, it had video games, and I'm kind of hoping that the High Republic goes in that direction as well, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a waste to create this whole timeline and not have that type of stuff, especially with the video games. I mean, obviously, I would assume that there's already been talks of games being in the works for this timeline, being that it's releasing in August and a lot of that stuff is buttoned up. early, and it takes obviously a very long time to develop a video game, especially a AAA one of quality.
Right.
So I do think that ball already has to be in motion. Hopefully we hear something soon with it.
Sure.
Maybe E3 might have some sort of release, because right now there are no Star Wars games in development that have a title announced, right? So
right. We know that there's companies working on stuff, but we don't know anything about it. We are completely in the dark. I
mean, what could be more of a, killer and system seller on a PS5 or an Xbox Project X than a Star Wars launch title? I think it would be, it's almost a no-brainer. So hopefully that is already in the books and they're already working on that thing. I don't know if that would be a High Republic game that would come out then, but you have to think that they're not creating this whole timeline and this whole setting and then not digging into these other things. And I think you'll also see maybe some of the one-off movies as well taking place into this, maybe not a saga movie, but just a kind of some of the one-off type stuff. And maybe they do a full trilogy in this time frame.
This could definitely be a test. This could be put something out there that is, we don't know how people will, this is a low investment, publishing a novels, while it is expensive, it's a lot of production. You have to, you have to get all the marketing, and you got to get the talent and all of that. And you got to put them all together and churn out some really quality stuff. But the risk of a novel versus a Disney Plus series or a movie is so much less in a book. And if fans latch onto this, if fans love it, then, they're not going to say, oh, well, we said back in, February that it's not going to be a movie, so we can't do it. If it's going to make money for Disney, they're going to do it. I also wanted to quickly point out that while we have no word on what feature films are coming from Star Wars, Bob Iger, who recently just retired, and now the new Bob is taking over, who was the president of Disney Parks. He's Bob Iger is still going to stay on for a year creatively. In his last investment call said the future of Star Wars is television. But we do have, we've looked at the release calendar, like we mentioned with the Indiana Jones thing. The release calendar still has the Star Wars feature films as untitled Star Wars, still coming out in 2022, 2024, and 2026, when I'll be a ripe 45 years old. Fantastic. So that's how I look at these when Disney bought Lucasfilm, I was like, oh, 2015, I'm going to be 34 when that movie comes out. And now I'm like, man, can I be 34 again? That would be great. But some really cool Star Wars up on the horizon. And as always, we'll be following all the cool Star Wars stuff, along with all the other cool stuff in the world of geek, here on the show.
Let's look around the region and take our pick of the week.
Shut up and take my money.
All right, it's time for the pick of the week. And James, I'm feeling pretty generous this time, so I'm thinking maybe you go first.
I guess I'll go first if I have to. My pick of the week is a PS4 game. It is a exclusive game to the PS4, and it's not really a game. It's called Dreams. It's by Media Molecule, the guys that brought us Little Big Planet, and also Tearaway, which is a lesser known game, but it's not as good, so it should be lesser known. Anywho, Dreams is essentially a creation platform. And a platform to share your creations. And this is anything from a 3D model that you want to create to a song, to anything. And essentially, I think the idea behind it is that essentially you build something, people play it, they upvote it, and then also people can contribute to it. So on the Dreams subreddit, I'm seeing a lot of stuff where people are saying, hey, I need a voiceover for a character that does this, or a Southern character, I need a voiceover for that. And people are volunteering to do voice work, and people are saying, hey, I need somebody who can help me create a model with a moving mouth and things like that. So it's a lot of folks trying to kind of coming together to build these projects and build these little small experiences. And this, I guess you could put an asterisk to this because it's not for everybody. You have to understand that these are people that are sitting on their couch building this. This is not somebody who's, maybe this is their full-time gig, but a lot of there's just a lot of cool things that are out there that people have made, and it's super impressive what people have done and the kind of the community that's built around this game. It didn't sell great, so it's not there's not like a ton of there's not a ton of depth, I guess, to the community. Well, I guess it is very deep, but it's kind of a small community that is very deep, and everybody's helping people out and really coming up with some awesome projects. And if you're interested, I would suggest maybe Googling and having, there's people that have put lists together of really cool projects that are available out there, and you can watch the YouTube videos of those projects. But just the idea that all of this was made in this single platform, and it's everything from right now. I just yesterday was playing a kart racer that somebody made. It had like 3 tracks on it, and it was simple, but the idea that took a week, right, for somebody to make. Imagine what that's going to be in a year if he continues at it and gets the recognition for it and things like that. I think it's a really cool platform, and even game people have gotten hired to work for game developers that are on this. It's pretty impressive, the quality of things that are going on that platform. And like I said, it's not really a game, it's more of a platform. And PlayStation has stood behind this. They've put a lot of money into this, and they've said that it's going to be a 10-year, at least a 10-year cycle for this game, and for doing updates and things like that. So I think it's just something that you should check out, even if it's just online by doing some Googling. I'm not a creative person, so I don't do any of the creations, but I've just really enjoyed getting in and seeing what people have done. It even has a mode where you just get a random creation. And it pops
that's neat.
And you start doing it, and you can back out anytime. You can leave feedback. You can say, hey, I like this, but this didn't work. Or, when I was jumping around, I kept getting stuck in a wall, that type of stuff. I think it's just a really cool idea. And I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Because there's definitely some hype leading up to it. So it's nice to hear that it sounds like what we were hearing, what we were seeing kind of lives up to that.
Yeah, it definitely does.
That's cool. So if anybody's out there wanting to make a Sequest game, I would love to consult.
Are you willing to lend your voice to the Sequest?
Oh my gosh, would I ever?
I should look and see if there's a Sequest game out there.
Wow, that'll be just disappointing. So the thing that I want to recommend is an upcoming Amazon Prime show that's coming up. It's got a trailer out, and it's called Tales from the Loop. And you might, watching it, you might recognize the style and the art because, and I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. He's a Swedish artist. His name is Simon Stallenhag. And he's done these really awesome illustrations. They usually are very like Swedish landscapes with like, some kids, and there's like a robot, and it has this really cool, unique work. There's a tabletop RPG. He's put out some art books, but this is a series that revolves around a town that's built above this super massive particle accelerator. That's the Loop. And it's got some pretty big names behind it. You got Matt Reeves, the guy that's doing the Batman. He is co-executive producing this thing with Nathaniel Halpern, who did Legion, and it looks really cool. And that's all I really know about it. It just watching the teaser for it is I'm just like I love the aesthetic. I like the look of this thing. It's got I have lots of questions, and it's coming to Amazon Prime, and I'm looking for the date, April 3rd. So in a month, we've got this cool show. It looks really neat. I think everybody should really check it out. Something else everybody should really check out is joining us over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Join our community there. And don't forget to like and retweet and share the show with your friends, because that helps grow the Geek State. So from all of us here at the Geek State, stay excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
For the love of football, they're running through our ass like through a tin horn. Beep!
James, I just want to just briefly talk about the fact that we had the Texas Throwdown this past weekend, with Houston remaining undefeated, and it was, for me, so infuriating watching this thing on my phone in the back of a van, with Dallas right there about to, just yards away from a touchdown that would potentially win them the game, and then the interception, and then Landry is out with a I haven't been able to follow up to see what his injury was, but he is something with his knee, right?
Yeah, an offensive lineman rolled onto his bad knee. This happens. He's probably going to be out for the season. He did not look happy as he was laying on the ground. It's kind of devastating, and it's really tough. Honestly, being serious for a second, it's really tough when you have somebody in this league that has an injury like that, just because they did it. They're in this league because they love football. It's not because Landry Jones doesn't think he's going to get a huge contract from this, right? He's not going to the league. He's doing this because he loves the game of football, right? And it's a little bit devastating when you get an injury like that, and it's kind of taken back away from you. So I do feel for him. Unfortunately, he did throw 3 picks in the first quarter and also only 3 completions. So he literally completed just as many passes to his own team as he did the other team. I would say 2 of those are arguably his fault. One of them was definitely his fault. But that aside, I mean, the Houston Roughnecks are the best team in the league, in my opinion, especially watching the DC Defenders the last 2 weeks just drop absolute dogs to the Wildcats, the Los Angeles Wildcats, and then more recently the Tampa Bay Vipers. Still love this league. Still love the things that they're doing. Whenever they're reviewing a play, you get to hear the conversation from the referees to the box who's reviewing the play. I think that's the greatest thing of all time.
The audio part of it is definitely the thing that has kept me the most interested in this. As someone who is who played high school football, who played high school, I played baseball, I played high school soccer, but I never was into watching professional sports. I love getting that inside look on the field, and I knew that for this game I was going to be in a car with other people driving back from a work event, and I remembered at least this time to bring my AirPods so I could listen, so I could actually enjoy the game. And the part that stinks the most is I got a phone call that interrupted my AT&T TV feed right before that interception happened at the end of the game.
So it is your fault.
So it is my fault. I looked away from the game and we lost, and that's what happened. But still, Renegades, we got this.
I just want to give a shout out to the XFL and their creative marketing and the things that they've done to really encourage this rivalry, in which if you bought season tickets to Houston, then you got a ticket to this game in Dallas. I think that's super cool. I think that's a great idea to really get that mix of the crowd in the rivalry games. And then I believe the same occurs for the Dallas when we play Houston later in the year at Houston. I think that's a cool little thing that they did to really encourage this rivalry. And I think it's pretty good. And based on me trying to buy 2 tickets together yesterday, it was tough. So I will say that I hope this league is here to stay. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm going to enjoy continuing to watch it.
Let's see.
Feel free to use that for the intro next time.
I'll probably use that.